Hans Niemann's journey to the grandmaster title was a bit unorthodox. No, it wasn't that he cheated or that he was the youngest ever. It was the final game for his grandmaster norm where he got the victory in only 22 moves without capturing a single piece. So without further ado, let's jump into the game. So Hans Niemann opens with d4, we have Sebastian knight f6, and they just head into a very standard Nimzo-Indian defense. Hans then goes e3 as the main line, and then Sebastian just decides to castle here. Hans goes bishop e3, targeting that pawn on h7, and then Sebastian just goes b7. You think b7 looks like a pretty normal move, you know, wants to redouble your control of that all-important e4 square, which is the main idea of Nimzo-Indian. You pin the knight so it doesn't control e4, so white doesn't get this. But Niemann said there's already a mistake, because he thinks after knight e2, if black decides to go here, and let's say you kick the bishop after takes, white just has the bishop pair, so the two bishops to the one bishop, and you think, well, this g2 pawn's hanging, isn't it? Well, no, you can just capture, you can sacrifice the pawn, you can see the bar's rising already, and you just play rook g1, and you have this lovely little rook attacking the king, and this kingside attack is going to be very brutal, because this rook is going to pin this pawn, this knight is now very loose, and you can get things in this battery or get a queen in here, and it's going to be very bad news for the black position, so you can't take instead. So yeah, so Hans decides to play knight e7, and then bishop b7 played by Sebastian. Hans just goes a3, asking this bishop a question, you know, where do you want to go? Are you going to take or come back? So of course, he doesn't take for the reasons we discussed earlier, because obviously if you take, well then, white has the bishop pair, and then also he recaps with the knight so the pawn structure isn't damaged, and also again you can't take this pawn. So Hans just pushes e4, which is a great move, and this idea is he's just achieved everything he wants. You have 3 pawns in the center, so black is basically getting crushed. I mean, look at all the squares these pawns control. It is absolutely crazy, and then black is sort of in this box, so not very much piece play for black yet. And I think Engine here just wants him to develop piece, so good for Sebastian. Classic, just play d6, stops you from getting rolled in the center as quickly, and also has benefit if you can get your knight now to c7. It had the benefit of not blocking this c5 pawn, or c pawn. So Hans decides to castle quickly, and then c5, which is a bit of an inaccuracy, because idea is Sebastian needs to get a piece out. He shouldn't be focusing on the pawn play here. He needs to develop his pieces more, and this will be more reinforced, and he's better equipped to handle any sort of attack that faces his position. So Hans just goes d5, thinks, nope, not going to take. Why would I give away my advantage of having a big center? And surprisingly, Sebastian closes it down. So we have this sort of Benoni-esque pawn structure where white's bishop is pretty much nullified. You know, this is biting on granite. It's useless. And you have, you know, the knight's not doing too much, just defending. This bishop is now sort of boxed out of the game. And Han just has all this extra space. See, he's controlling a bit more. Obviously, these pawns just get in black's way. So we have knight g3, routing a piece of the kingside attack. And as you may know, as the center is closed, it benefits the attacker because it's harder to rotate pieces around to defend the king. So we have knight e8. Black undevelops a piece, but okay, he's preparing f4 here, trying to desperately break out, but let's just look at that. He's just got all these pieces now on the first 2 ranks. Knight f5 by Hans is a square he's called knife f5 by Garrick Aspara, because it's such a good outpost for the knight. You know, this g7 pawn is such a little squishy target. Obviously, maybe slightly more defended now, but what a great attacking square for a knight to be on this early in the game. We have bishop f6 played by Sebastian. He's obviously trying to develop his bishop, maybe reinforce the center a bit, or keep an eye on this g7 pawn, and it helps him in any attack. So we have g3, which seems like an odd move, because the fact that it doesn't really do much, but when you realize it's preparing h4, and also gives the king a little bit of breathing room, which is going to come into play later in the game. So we have bishop c8 played by Sebastian, just putting some pressure on this knight. Maybe he wants to exchange it, as after all, is a very good piece, and this bishop, let's face it, was pretty awful. So that'd be a nice exchange. h4 by Hans, just beginning the attack. And we have g6 played by Sebastian. So Hans just jumps in with the knight, checking the king. King has to slide over. And we just go king g2, which is best move by the engine. The idea is you want to move the king out the way so you can swing the rook over, and this attack is really going to break through. So bishop g7 played by Sebastian. Hans just pushes the pawn, because obviously this trade would be good for white, because all the dark squares would be so weak. So obviously I'll show you that here. I mean, the rook's going to have to move. This square is so crucial to the attack. So if you get a queen here, obviously that'd be mate if the knight wasn't there. So then we have g5 played by black. Just wants to close down, make sure the center isn't, the king side isn't getting cracked open that quickly. So a bit of a parry to Hans' attack, but it doesn't last for long, because we just have knight g4, dropping the knight back. But a retreating move is actually an attacking move in this case, because h6 is coming, and then this bishop is going to be kicked out, and it's very uncomfortable for black here. So of course, he just goes queen to d7. This has a bonus of attacking the knight, so obviously Hans f3, defend the knight. And as you may have noticed, we've had a lot of moves. This game is only 22 moves long. We're on move 19. So you think, how has Hans won this game in only 3 more moves without taking a single piece? Well, then we have h6, finishing the closing of the structure, and then rook to h1. Sort of a cryptic move, because you think, well, this pawn is blocked. What's the idea here? Well, the idea is, in future, at the right time, not now, Hans will ideally sacrifice this bishop, and then after you take back, this h-pawn is just rolling, and you can't barely even stop it. Bishop will have to move, and after the opening for the position with the move maybe like f4, you move the queen in, get the other rook in the game. And it's more abstract the more I go into these lines, but as you can see, the attack is very strong here. So this rook h1 move is actually the best move in the position. So we had a6 by Sebastian, and then this is just, it's almost out of touch with the position, because as you see, everything's towards the king side. You know, all these pieces are firing down these lines, everything's just trying to attack on the king side. You know, it leaves yourself open to all sorts of attacks. Maybe reroute this knight, try and play f4, or just move the queen up, get the rook in the game. All these sort of ideas, and you're trying to break in the queen side. It's very strange, because everything's happening on the king side. And then we have knight to e3, wants to reroute the knight, maybe get it back on f5, and then knight c7, played by Sebastian, trying to maybe push b5, and Hans Niemann in this position plays the move knight a4, and Sebastian resigned the game. So it seems a bit cryptic. I mean, Hans' advantage is 3 on the engine, but even just from the eye test, you know, look at all these pawns. Hans just has so much more space in the position. He has all to play. He's playing. Sebastian has the very thankless defensive task. Obviously, this pawn literally cannot be defended. And once you lose the pawn, you're losing it with a fork, so you're going to have to play something like rook a7, and then Hans will take the pawn, hits the queen. You can get your other knight in the game. I mean, it's very easy, simple moves to find, and obviously you're going to break in the centre, try and get this rook in the game. It's brutal. I mean, probably worth playing on here, but I mean, if you're Sebastian and you don't want to play this position, it's a very uncomfortable one. You're probably not going to win. You're probably going to get absolutely smoked, to be honest, so it makes sense to resign here. So, very well played by Hans Niemann there. No, I don't think he cheated in this game, but anyway, if you enjoyed that video, here's one that YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy, so maybe give that a little watch, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.